Hi everybody, welcome to Orgoland Lab. My name is Nick Doe and I'll be your instructor this semester. And so what this video is about is just to go over some of the logistics of the actual lab course so you don't have to listen to them during the first lab, and we can just get started and get going and do lab work, which is a lot more fun than listening to me discuss what's needed to get a good grade in lab. So that's what this video is about. But I know it won't cover everything. So please feel free to come to our first lab with any questions you have about anything going on in this video. So there's our little friends. They're going to join us for the ride in terms of what goes on in our Orgoland lab. Why isn't it working now? Ugh. Got to start again. Hi everybody. Hopefully this is one of the last videos I'll ever have to make in my basement, officially known as my office for the last year and a half. But it's a very important one because I wanted to let you know about all the logistics that are going to take place for our lab this semester so that we can just come to our first lab and just almost start playing in lab right away, or I can just answer any questions you have about logistics of lab. So let's get started. Orgo Lab this semester is gonna be on Sakai. Everything's on Sakai. We love Sakai. Over there. We love Sakai. Yes. So please make sure that you check out Sakai often. And here is the left-hand menu bar of our Sakai site. Has lots of different things that you may have never seen in other Sakai sites for other courses. So let me just accentuate. You can always go here, and in the overview there, you will see the Welcome to Chem 211, and you will see a list of where you can find everything you need in our Sakai site to successfully find your way around our Orgo Lab. So to begin with, I think it's really important you understand where I am. So here are my office hours, and you can find all of this in the syllabus that's here. So if you don't see this video again, but please note all the different locations that I'll be hanging out in for face-to-face and a little Zoom office hours. So please feel free to come to any of those. And my office is in Simpson West, and some of the office hours are in Simpson West. So I gave you a little map to navigate your way to Simpson West. Okay, what else is going on? We have a lab manual. And this lab manual could be different than other lab manuals for the exact same course. We've just been trying to modify it, and so I promise you this lab manual will get you there where you need to go because it's the lab manual I'm expecting you to use. So please feel free to go to our resources section. It'll also have the lab manual, but here is a direct link to the lab manual site, which is a PDF. Okay? Next for lab, you will be working with assigned partners in almost every lab we do. And so I want you to make sure you can check out this Google spreadsheet link. Please check here even for lab number 1 coming up this week. You will have a lab partner assigned to you. Okay? So check that out, and that'll be important because what you and your lab partners need to be able to do is create a Google Doc eLab with each other. And the easiest way to spy this Google Doc eLab is to come to the resources section of our Sakai site. And there is a Google Doc that I've created as a template for every lab report that you and your partner are ever going to generate. We are going to dump almost all of our graded information into these eLabs. So please make sure to create them with this template, and most importantly, please make sure to share your Google Doc with not only your partner, but also with me, since I need to see what you're doing. Okay? Awesome. When you create this shared Google Doc, it would be really nice if we all had the same format for the title of your Google Doc. So please try to use this title. Oops, sorry. Please try to use this form for every title that you have for your Google Docs and for your eLabs. It'll make it much easier for us to organize them and communicate back and forth on these. Okay? Next, and last but definitely not least, forums. Shared Spotify list. Cool. Forums. Really, if you go to the forum section, you'll see a place where you can ask questions about every single lab, put them out there to me, put them out there to your lab mates, and see if you can get your questions answered in the forum section. Shared Spotify list. 3.5 hours is a long lab, especially if we just come to lab, do a little Q&A for the first 15-20 minutes, and then get started. We're talking about 3 hours of hanging out in lab performing really cool chemistry. But it'd be nice if we had a little tunes in the background. So please feel free to go to this shared Spotify list and add any nice, cool songs that you would like to hear as background music while you're doing your lab experience. I know that can also lift your spirits sometimes, especially as we get into the dark days of winter. Yes, winter is coming. Ooh, sorry. So that'd be kind of fun. All right. Granted, this is just an introduction. Please feel free to come and ask me more questions about other things like this chemistry safety quiz. All right. But what you're really probably curious about is, what is my lab grade? Well, your lab grade is going to come from several different pieces, the majority of which, though, will always be thrown into a shared eLab that you're sharing with me, and therefore you will not be turning in any separate documents. No separate handouts, no separate worksheets. It all gets put into your shared eLabs. Okay? So this is information that's all in my syllabus, so I will be very brief here and highlighting just the important parts. That before lab, you will want to do and answer the pre-lab questions that are in the lab manual and put those in the appropriate eLab. You want to do that before noon on the day before lab. So the day before lab, I can see if you're ready to do the lab if you've answered the pre-lab questions. These questions are not supposed to be difficult, just to let you know. Notice they're only 5% of your overall lab grade, because I just want to make sure you've read the lab manual or viewed the actual YouTube videos that go along with the lab. And even I just want to make sure you've seen the answers to these pre-lab questions. So if you just want to share with your lab mates and get the answers from them, I am totally fine with this, okay? Really, I have no problem. If you put all the answers on the forum and you guys just share the answers, life is easy, because we don't want to make Chem 211 lab hard, right? Right. Lecture will do that. So pre-labs, day before by noon in your eLab. Post-labs, this is going to be due also the day before lab for the following week. So you do a lab, you will have almost an entire week to answer the post-lab questions and put them in the appropriate eLab, okay? And I'm just keeping it consistent that both of these assignments will always be due at noon the day before your next lab, okay? One about the lab you're about to do, one about the lab that you just did in the past. Boom, all on the same day in separate eLabs. Whew. Okay, now you see why you might ask me questions. There's a couple other pieces of graded work that will not necessarily show up in your eLab. One are these open eLab quizzes that occur 5 times throughout the actual course of the semester. They are theme-based, and so in Lab 3, you will have a quiz about the theory and pre-lab theory and procedures that took place in Lab 1 and 2, because Lab 1 and 2 are very, very similar to each other. They're both about chromatography. So you only have one quiz on chromatography at the beginning of Lab 3. You can use your eLabs. It'll be done during the first 15-20 minutes of our actual lab in Lab 3. And we'll do the exact same thing for Lab 5, Lab 6, 8, and 11. These make up a significant chunk of your actual lab grade because they're independent. You do them on your own while you're sitting in lab, working and looking at previous eLabs that you have all your information dumped into. So keep this in mind. The more information you can dump into your eLabs, copy and paste from the lab manual, I don't mind, go ahead and do that. copy and paste from anywhere. As long as you reference it, you can put anything and everything into your eLabs and use them on the quiz. Okay? So that should make these quizzes a little less stressful. Please feel free to ask me more questions about these, especially as our first quiz is about to come up in Lab 3. Then, other little assignments that are going to take place that are relatively unique and have their own actual weights in the lab grade are things like our designer lab, which is an incredibly fun and interesting lab, happens towards the end of the term and end of the semester, where you actually get to design your very own experiment, not your senior thesis, but something a little less stressful, and play around with it in lab and see what happens. It's a great, great experiment. Then there's one coming up very soon called the Dual Unknown Lab, where you and an assigned partner will have two unknowns that you have to try to figure out what they are using lab data. And this, along with your version of your participation and your ability to create these eLabs, all of this gets morphed into one little 5% of your total grade. Okay? Please ask me questions about this. I'm being very brief in these. In the end, what I want you to get a sense of, though, is all these pre-lab question assignments, 11 of them in total, 10 post-labs, 10 or 11 post-labs. All of these post-labs and pre-lab assignments, I really don't want to sit there and try to figure out, is that a 9.5 out of 10 or is that a 9 out of 10? So instead, you are going to get these three possible marks, a check plus, a check, and a check minus. But you can see that a check plus is some kind of A. A check is really kind of really could go anywhere from a low C to a high B. So those are very amorphous. And a check minus means you're really not doing that well on the assignment. But remember, no one mark here. You get one check minus on one pre-lab, you got 10 more to go, okay? It's 5% of your grade. Try not to obsess about any one single pre-lab or post-lab score, because you will have good weeks and bad weeks. Ooh, 3 midterms. I didn't have time to do the pre-lab. Okay, check minus. Not a disaster. It's when you get lots of check minuses, more than 3, lots of, returns that just aren't ready to go below check minus. This is when you should have concern, and I definitely will let you know when you're in trouble. But I don't want this kind of generic grading system here to have any, make you question how you're doing in lab. So at any time throughout the semester, please feel free to come up to me and go like, Nick, I got all these checks and check pluses. Is that an A? Am I getting a B or a C? What am I doing in lab? And I would be glad to let you know how you're doing. I just don't want to sit there and start arguing about a half a point here and a half a point there. Since we're only doing 5 quizzes, I think it's very important you know how you're doing on those 5 quizzes. I definitely will numerate those and give you a score out of 10, 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, those kind of things, so you can see how you're doing on your quizzes. But so much of the other stuff, so many more things to grade, not worth obsessing about a half a point here, half a point there. Hopefully you agree with me on that. But keep asking me questions if you want to know how you're doing in the course and in the lab. I'd be glad to help. Okay? All right. These are my 2 favorite dogs because they're in our house. This is Tybee, the gray and white one, and Luna, the 10-year-old old one. We just got Tybee as a COVID puppy. Hopefully you have a lot of fun pets and that feel free to share with me. But again, any questions about these logistics, please let me, Tybee, or Luna know what your questions are, and we'll be able to go over this during our first lab. Finally, I want to give you just a general overview of what all of these logistics and our new in-person lab experience is going to be like. Okay? So please, this is the kind of flow that you should have from week to week. You should read or view. There will be lots of little YouTube videos that I'm stealing from the remote Chem 211 courses we've taught, or previous in-person Chem 211 courses we've taught, and having you look at those for techniques for procedures you're about to do, or theory on procedures you're about to do. For example, Lab 1 has a video by Professor Vellucci. It's awesome on the theory of thin layer chromatography. So I highly recommend you take a peek at it. These are in our lab manual, and the links for these videos are in the lab manual as well. So the lab manual is a constant source of information. Please make sure you try to read, view everything before coming to lab. There's nothing, I mean, essentially lab, when you get there, I will take a few questions, very brief pre-lab discussion, especially if there's already a video out there about it, and let you get started on the lab, okay? Please complete the pre-lab questions. They're in italics there in red. Complete those before you come to lab, because then you also know what's going to go on in lab. Come to lab and put on your supplied paper surgical mask safety glasses and lab coat. Yes, we are giving you paper masks. Okay, so even if you come with a cloth mask, we're going to ask you to exchange it for the paper mask, and we'll have these for you every week in lab. Okay. On the first lab, we will also bring you a brand new pair of safety glasses. This is yours to keep forever and ever. Woohoo! Okay. We will also supply you with a disposable lab coat. Don't dispose of it after the first week. You get one for the entire semester. So put your name on it, write all over it, your favorite molecule, you know, tat on the sleeve. This is yours to keep. And at the end of every lab, you will fold them all up in any way you want and stuff them into the supply that we are giving you. Huge Ziploc bag to keep them safe and away from any other users. And ready for you, because you'll have your name on it, ready for you to pick up when you come to lab the next week. So that is how we will keep ourselves somewhat sterile and clean from one another, because our labs are going to feel a little more full now that we are not going to be doing social distancing with our lab class sizes. Okay? Before the lab starts, you can ask me tons of questions, or I will give a brief pre-lab discussion just to make sure you're clear about the most important parts of the procedure. But in general, I'm warning you, most of the time, you're just going to show up to lab and I'm going to be like, go for it. Get started. If you have no questions, get started. Because I think doing lab is a lot more fun than listening to me, as you've noticed in this one video. All right. Occasionally, labs 3, 5, 6, 8, and 11, the beginning of lab will have this short quiz, hard copy quiz that I'll be passing out, and you can use your eLabs on these quizzes. And then you'll complete the lab with your assigned partner. Woohoo! You'll have fun in there. And you'll be working in hoods for Chem 211. And so we'll definitely go over what working in a chemistry hood in our Orgo labs is all about when you show up to your first lab. At the end of lab, it is really, really important now that you and your partner dispose of your chemicals appropriately, and I'll show you how to do that in our first lab. You clean your own glassware and put it back where it belongs. And you also wipe down your workbenches, hood bench, lab bench, and wipe them down with the sponges we've provided to keep them nice and sterile and ready for the next users in the next lab. All right, and last but not least, then you finish the lab and you have almost a whole week before you have to turn in the results questions and questions to ponder that are in our lab manual at the end of each lab. And they get thrown right in the shared eLab that you share with me and your lab partner. Okay? So this is the general flow of week to week of how our Chem 211 lab is going to take place. And notice, I don't think I've listed enough, mentioned enough, I really like questions. So come to office hours as many times you want, email me as much as you want, Zoom me if you need to as much as you want, but get your questions answered. I have taught Chem 211 for almost 30 years now. Wow, 30 years. So Chem 211, there is no question in the lecture portion or the lab portion that I might not be able to help you with. So please use me as a resource. I am your Orgoland tour guide. Use me. All right. I'll see you very soon in lab. And please email me if you have any questions. Oh, there it is again. All right. See you later. Bye, everybody.